So Galileo realized that there are three variables in a pendulum. Now, a pendulum system, yes, I want you to draw what I draw, okay? Write it down. So here's the pendulum, and it swings, and it oscillates back and forth, okay? Now, how it does that is pretty interesting, but just it swings back and forth. It has a regular oscillation period, it's called. And so, how many times will it swing in a minute is our given question here. So what we're going to do is see the effect of the different variables on its swings per minute. Swings per, yes, write this down, minute. You should have it written right under the Galileo stuff. So swings per minute, that's going to be our responding variable. We can abbreviate that as SPM, okay? Swings per minute is the responding variable. We're going to count the swings. Now, when we do this, I find it's a little easiest just to do it for 30 seconds at a time. It's easier to lose your track of your counting the longer you go. So if we do it at 30-second increments and then double the number, and you're going to repeat it 4 times for each of the trials. Now, what are we going to be doing for a manipulated variable? There are 3 different variables involved in a pendulum system. One of them is how far it swings back and forth. That's the one, by the way, that Galileo observed in the cathedral when the chandelier was just barely bumped and it was swinging a big distance, and then it was just barely going back and forth. And that really surprised him, what he saw. Well, we're going to test to see what effect the distance it swings, distance, as a manipulated variable. Now, you could also think of that as the angle it swings in, because the farther it is, the bigger angle is, or is the distance. And what we're going to do is what you're going to measure out from when it hangs straight down. The first one you're going to do is going to be 3 inches out. So it's going to be, kind of a gentle swing. And the second time you're going to do it, it's going to be 6 inches out. And so it's going to be more of a swing. And the third time you do it, the third trial, is going to be 12 inches out. So that's going to be a much bigger swing. So we're going to try 3 different distances and see if they have an effect. Now remember, that's the manipulated variable. We're manipulating the distance, and we're going to repeat each one 4 times and see if it, because that'll help eliminate any counting errors or something. The second manipulated variable, the variables that the pendulum has, is the length of the string. You could have a variable with a longer string. Now, we're not going to change that in this one because we want it to be a controlled experiment. We want to isolate the effect of just the distance, that one variable. So the second lab that we're going to do is going to go for the length of the string. Okay, and we're going to see what effect the length of the string has on how many times it swings in a minute. So that's write that down, the second variable of the pendulum. And the third variable of the pendulum is how much the object weighs that's hanging on it. Now that object is called the bob. A lot of times it's called the weight. So what is the weight of the weight? The weight of the weight. That sounds kind of weird. So we'll just say the mass of Bob. Okay, and that's the Bob. I capitalized it, but I capitalized the other things too. And so the mass of the bob. So on the third one, what we're going to do, we're keeping the distance the same and the length the same. We're going to change the mass on the third one to see if that has an effect on the swings per minute. And we'll get to that one when we get to that one. So we're going to have a series of 3 pendulum labs we're going to do. And I want to remind you, this is really, really famous experiments. These were the experiments that Galileo, when he invented the controlled experiment, or at least he wrote it down as his methodology, and it spread throughout Europe as like, wow, this is a really good way to figure out how something works. Okay, and so this is kind of a landmark lab experiment, and you're going to do it in your own house. Okay, so here we go. Let's get on with how we're going to do the a lab measuring the effect of the distance on the swings per minute of a pendulum.